I am still processing. There's so much to process from this book that's only like 400 pages. Wow. This last third of the book was a roller coaster. And I kid you not, when I had to make myself slow down and reread pages because I was so upset and stressed out and screaming and raging. I feel like I went from crying to screaming in outrage, back and forth constantly. I think this is one of the most well-written, beautiful books I've ever read. I understand that might be an insane statement, but this is how I feel. I think these books are horribly misunderstood, and it's so wrong to just label them as fairy smut, which is what I've seen all over the internet. Sarah's writing to me feels very deep and connected to larger themes. The way that Sarah handles trauma, survival, love, and hope in this book, it shook me to my core just how deep all these themes are that she seeded into this story. Even death, life and death, they are prevalent, but not as much as these other themes, I feel, but even that she handles so well. And there are moments and choices in this book that made me rage, made me feel uncomfortable, but I believe we're supposed to feel that way. It's exactly how Feyre is also feeling in the process as all this is happening to her. She's being tested and challenged constantly. And this is her hero journey, her journey of discovering love and to find hope and really learn to trust. And not to mention how deeply she seeded everything in this story. The breadcrumbs, they were all there for us to find, but we had no idea, which just makes everything hurt that much more as she pulls it all together. As she just brings it all together through Feyre's eyes and the realization of everything. And I don't have words. I have words, I have a whole video, but I don't have words. I'm gonna be honest, I won't be able to react to everything. Otherwise, this video would be a bajillion hours long. We're gonna start with the characters. We're gonna start with our narrator, Feyre. I feel like she fully came full circle in this book with her arc of not just finding love, but also truly understanding it. I mean, there's a point where she talks about her and Isaac who like to wrestle in the hay, and love is brought up a few times, and she's like, I don't love him. Even if I did, I wouldn't understand it. She's very clueless to what love is, and this whole book is about her finding love, understanding it, loving herself, learning to trust others, and allowing herself to be loved, and allowing hope also to come into her life. I have already started re-listening to this book because I have no chill. And in doing such, I realized at the end of chapter 2, there's a discussion of hope between her and her father, and about how she doesn't believe in it, but how I'm just gonna read you the quote. "We need hope as much as we need bread and meat," he interrupted, his eyes clear for a rare moment. "We need hope, or else we cannot endure." When I looked at my father, my gaze was hard. There is no such thing. So this is an important thing because this is literally Feyre, she stated before, she doesn't understand love, she has no way to comprehend it, and she also doesn't believe in hope, at all. And so this whole story is about her figuring all that out. And then I feel like the hope thing, obviously we know the love thing comes full circle in a second, but the hope thing returned a second time. So it's when she's in her cell and she's literally falling apart at this point. She wants to completely give up. She doesn't want to exist. She doesn't want to even continue the trials. She's like, this is hopeless. What is the point? But then she hears the music through the vent, and she says how it makes her start to see color, and it makes her feel warm, and she finds hope again. I still don't know if that was Tamlin that was playing the music through the vents, because she talks about in those 2 or 3 pages about remembering how Tamlin played music and it brought her to life. So we don't know who did that. I'm very curious. The music rose, louder, grander, faster, from wherever it was played, a wave that peaked, shattering the gloom of my cell. A shuddering sob broke from me as the sound faded into silence. I sat there trembling and weeping, too raw and exposed, left naked by the music and the color in my mind. When the tears had stopped, but the music still echoed in my every breath, I lay on my pallet of hay, listening to my breathing. The music flittered through my memories, binding them together, making them into a quilt that wrapped around me, that warmed my bones. I love that Sarah has chosen color as sort of a metaphor for how Feyre sees the world, and especially as a painter. Because in the beginning of the book, she talked about how Feyre didn't really see color anymore. She was losing hope because they were starving and so poor, and she didn't bother to think about those things. And especially with her paintings she had done in the cottage were fading away, so what was the point? And then when she is with Tamlin and starts painting again, she finds all this hope again. And then so now when we're in this third act and she's in the cell and she's just completely losing it, the music brings her back. It brings color, it brings hope back into her life. And music is very important to me. Like I grew up with it. I listen to it constantly. It makes me feel so many things. It's such a powerful sensory tool to bring us back. I love that Sarah wrote it this way. Okay, so now this is the trusting and the love part and the hope and all that stuff. When Feyre has to decide about if she truly trusts that Tamlin has a stone heart from everything she heard while she was at the manor and recalling her memories. This whole sequence broke me. I will get to it, but this specific part. She knew she not only trusted herself, but she knew in her heart that she trusted Tamlin. Those are two very big things for her to realize. Holy guacamole, guys. The tears are already starting. Don't worry, the tissues, they're nearby. And she also trusted in fate in this moment, that fate brought her to all these things and she was meant to be here. This is what she was meant to do. And so she decides to release herself over to it. And I think that when all those things sort of come together for her, that is truly when her hero's journey, I think, is mostly complete, because she at that point has let go. She has to trust that once she stabs him with the ash sword, that he won't die. There's a lot riding on this. I mean, Tamlin also gives her a look. He has no idea what she's thinking. He doesn't have psychic powers like Rhys. We'll get to him. Just the way that Tamlin looked at her, they connected. And he just was hoping and praying that she knew this was the one piece she had to find out. It's such a big, beautiful, poetic moment. Trust no one, Alice told me, but I trusted Tamlin. And more than that, I trusted myself. I trusted that I had heard correctly. I trusted that Tamlin had been smarter than Amarantha. I trusted that all that I had sacrificed was not in vain. The entire room was silent, but my attention was upon only Tamlin. The revelation must have been clear on my face, for his breathing became a bit quicker, and he lifted his chin. I took a step toward him, then another. I was right. I had to be. I sucked in a breath as I grabbed the dagger off the outstretched pillow. I could be wrong. I could be painfully, tragically wrong. But there was a faint smile on Tamlin's lips as I stood over him, ash dagger in hand. There was such a thing as fate, because fate had made sure I was there to eavesdrop when they'd spoken in private, because fate had whispered to Tamlin that the cold, contrary girl he dragged to his home would be the one to break the spell, because fate had kept me alive just to get to this point, just to see if I had been listening. And there he was, my High Lord, my beloved, kneeling before me. I love you, I said, and stabbed him. I couldn't even get through reading that quote. That's how much that moment broke me. Okay, so these are the things I'm a little upset at Feyre. It's good storytelling, doesn't mean I'm not emotionally upset at her. I don't like that she's telling Rhys her trauma and not Tamlin about how it felt to kill the fairies. I understand that it's all interwoven and connected, that she did all this for him, but also for herself, and it's too close, it's too much, and she just wants to be with him, but that's always like a red flag when you're telling not your partner your trauma and telling it to someone else who clearly Rhys has like a thing for her. And then it's really cool she's a fairy. It definitely seemed like she was a little taken off guard, but Rhys and Tamlin both made the decisions that way she could live, and she kind of did this whole thing so that way her and Tamlin could be together. So I think it's just gonna take time to adjust. And it also feels very poetic too, because now that she's immortal, she kind of has the suffering that immortals deal with, is that they live forever. They have all their baggage, all their history. Resolving it is important, but also at the same time, stuff just keeps happening to you. So at some point, do you become exhausted? Like, how do you come to terms with all this when everything is just feels like a never-ending day? All right, so now we're moving on to Tamlin. Everything that he did to protect his men, like he had the weight of the world on him. And how he went under the mountain and he refused to give Amarantha any ammo, to the point that he barely showed any hint of emotion anytime Feyre was in the room. And when he came up to her at the ball and grazed her hands, she said just feeling his heat next to her. It was so beautifully painful. He hasn't been acknowledging her, and that's all she's wanted. But she came here to save him, and And then when they went into the back room, like I almost cried how much they wanted each other. And then of course Rhys comes in, and I know he did it to like protect her, but he was still such a douchebag, and he did it to infuriate Tamlin more, so he would use that as ammo to attack Amarantha. It's just still, the whole sequence, like it broke my heart. And the way that he just like obeyed Rhys and just walked out the door. Then he said, I love you to her still. Not being able to be with the one you love, and like, but having to be at the command of these people in order to save them, save Feyre. And again, when his hood is pulled off and is standing there deciding that she might have to kill him, and she's unsure at this moment. But again, that's the little smile he gives her. So I love that he was the support in this story. Normally we typically have a male hero and the woman in the story is the support, but this time he was the support for her because this is her journey, and he did everything to support and protect her for this moment. Yes, it was about a curse that happened to him, but she's the one that had to break the curse. Everything was riding on her shoulders. So I love that Sarah twisted that and did that differently, because she saved him, he guided her, and he guided her on her journey by giving her love and safety. Okay, Lucien. I just want to hug him. I love him so much, and I love how loyal he and Tamlin are to each other, and especially how loyal he is to Tamlin, because Tamlin literally took him in when his family wanted to kill him, and then he had to kill his brother in order to survive. His story, it hurts me. It's so tragic. And all the pain that he continues to endure for Tamlin. Like, and then again, I know he comes for Feyre because of his vow to Tamlin, but I also think he comes because he does care about her. He is risking his life. I went back and I read the moment about when she left the manor, because she brought it up when he came into her cell and she had made agreement with Rhysand, and he was so infuriated because he was like, I was going to protect you, I was going to take care of you, but then he couldn't even do it because of the lashings that had happened to him, and he couldn't even get out of bed because she's refusing to allow them to heal properly. And it just like, he was so upset, and it broke him, and it broke my heart in that moment. And she's like, why do you care for what you said to me at the manor when I left? Like, why do you care about me? And so I went back to that moment. He said, I thought you were smarter than this. And that's because Lucien has been leaving breadcrumbs for her the entire time. He acted standoffish and jerkish towards her so that way she would fall for Tamlin. He sent her to the cereal so she could get more clues. He did everything. And he's like, God, I really thought you were smart. And it's so much she had no idea because they couldn't tell her. And I love that Lucien helped Tamlin kill Amarantha at the end with his sword. And I just thought it was so cathartic. And I want Lucien to get the world because he doesn't deserve all the pain he's been through anymore. This is the look, the face that Rhysand gives me. I don't like him. I want to punch him in the face. I don't like him. The psychological damage that Sarah has caused on me from him. I literally have an annotation in the book that says, I don't like all the mixed emotions that I'm having for Rhys right now. Sarah, you're a genius, but it hurts me the way that you laid this all out. It hurts me. The seesaw effect is for a reason. It pisses me off, but it's a freaking good mechanic for storytelling about how she seesaws our feelings back and forth about him. She does it to mess with Feyre, and it makes us as the reader question all of his motives just like she is. And when you're on the brink of death, what other choice do you feel that you have? The way that it's described in the book, I think she would have freaking died in the next hour. And there's no guarantee that Lucien would have been there on time. But I'm annoyed that she bargained about 1 week, but didn't argue about the term limit, for a year or 6 months or 3 months or whatever. None of that was discussed. And I understand that she was literally about to die. Only so many things she could think about in the moment, but it still upsets me. And yes, I get, he tells us he was doing all these things so he could piss off Tamlin more, so that way he'd be more enraged to call Amarantha, and he had to make sure people believed him and all this stuff. And also I think he kind of wanted to piss off Amarantha too for how she treats him. Again, it's genius, but doesn't mean it makes me feel okay. And we got to see some of his weaknesses. He did not like talking about his court and the things he's had to do to protect his people. I'm very interested to learn about that and what he's been through. That was his weak spot, besides Amarantha making him be her little harlot, which I do and don't feel bad. Okay, and these are other things. There's one thing in there that I'm mad at him about, but these are things I'm trying to figure out. So when Feyre is getting her ass kicked by Amarantha at the very end, because Amarantha is, I have words about her. Feyre slips into Rhys's consciousness, and we know he has psychic abilities, so he clearly had the power to do that. She's on the verge of death, so was he doing it to save her soul in case her body died, she physically died? He said that he was doing it so she wouldn't be alone when she passed. Sidebar, I'm really upset that was said because that's what Feyre said to Tamlin about the blue fairy dying. And I don't want them having emotional connections. Okay, back to what I was saying. Was it so she could see what was happening, so she could have advantage in the fight? And then, because that happened, when she's lying in bed with Tamlin, she says that she feels like a tug inside of her, and she knew exactly who it was and where to go, and she goes down and sees Rhys. Do they have a psychic connection now? Again, as I said before, I'm very upset that she's talking to Rhys about how she feels. I don't want them to have a connection. I've seen things on the internet, I just don't know everything. And it hurts me. It hurts me a lot. I have like a small thing about Amarantha. It's more like about storytelling, but I hate her. She sucks. I'm glad she's dead. I feel like Amarantha never believed and didn't want to believe that humans could love Faye, especially after what happened to her sister. And so she would never forgive humans, and she never believed that no one could love or would love Tamlin. And in truth, I don't think she actually ever loved him. It was just like an object of power and control. And when her sister died, I think she was just left with a vengeful rage, which is kind of what Alice says too. And because of that, she could never allow any sort of love in her life. And I think that she's a very well-written, justified villain. And I think that's why we all hate her so much. Let me know in the comments which part of the book has emotionally destroyed you the most. So the trials, they were really cool and really interesting. I liked how the first one was really just testing Feyre on who she is and like her hunting skills and survival. And it's funny because I feel like being in survival mode is a part of Feyre's trauma. And it has saved her life time and time again. So having to return to that sucks. But again, it's sometimes returning to coping mechanisms aren't always bad, especially if it can save your life. So that was really interesting. The second one with Lucien in the cage, this one I still feel like I'm trying to figure out because Amarantha didn't know that Feyre couldn't read. Only Rhys figured that out because he can read her mind. So I feel like this was more of a trust game and having to trust yourself enough to save you and your friend. Because even if she could read, she still have to trust that she was picking the right answer. So I think that trial was about trust. And then the last trial, which I don't think Amarantha, the things I said about the first two trials, I don't think those were her intention. I think those were Sarah's intention. As for the last one, this was to really show Amarantha's cruelty because it was so cruel. This is about Amarantha getting back at humans and for what they did to her sister. Like she literally wanted an eye for an eye, which like as I was writing the script, I was like, oh, she technically did that with Gwarian. And it broke me when the second Fae started reciting the prayer. Tamlin said to the blue Fae, who said, she took my wings. And as that Fae kept saying that prayer over and over, it completely destroyed me. Like I felt like I couldn't even see the page because I was crying. That was such a beautiful poetic callback. And this was again, Feyre having to balance life and death in her hands, which I'm now just realizing really connects with her being a hunter because she talks about in the beginning of the book, she never liked hunting and how it destroyed her, but she did it because it was only her way to survive. And in this moment too, she has to choose to kill in order to survive. Damn, Sarah. And I feel like Amarantha also wanted Feyre to have to experience this pain because Amarantha has to live with the pain forever of what happened to her sister. And so she wanted Feyre to not only suffer in this pain, but to also suffer in, because she probably thought she was going to lose the trials, that she would never kill Tamlin, which is why she brought him out in the first place. The secret part of the curse was so cool. And again, the way that Sarah seeds things, the breadcrumbs. Like it gave me chills. The fact that as Alice is dropping her off at the opening of the cave to go into the mountain and she says, listen, that's all she can say. And I was literally last night listening to the audiobook, and at the end, I think it's of chapter 6, as Feyre has just gotten to Corinthian, Alice tells Feyre, you'd be good to keep your mouth shut and listen. Like she's literally been trying to tell her from the beginning, listen, because you don't know what we could be trying to tell you. And I remember in the book when Lucien said to Tamlin, for someone who is a heart of stone, you're becoming soft lately, or to that extent. And I was like, when I read that, I was like, what does this mean? Does it have to do like with Tamlin not killing enough, you know, trying to protect the borders, like he should be killing more, even though I felt like he didn't want to do that. And like, that was literally just said purposely because they wanted Feyre to overhear it. And then again, when Tamlin did the glamour on Feyre, so the ACOTAR couldn't see her, the ACOTAR's like, you have a heart of stone. They kept trying to find all these moments because, again, as Alice said, magic likes rules. It likes things very specific. So they could never directly tell her things, but they could say things around her if it wasn't to her, or if she was like eavesdropping. I love that. That's like some of my favorite stuff when it comes to magic. The things that when people do these things, they don't think about it. They don't think about how magic actually works and the intricacies of it. And again, same thing when Lucen sends Feyre out for the cereal. He wanted her to find answers. I also think now he hesitated to find her because he wanted to test how strong she was in case she had to battle Amarantha. He wanted to see how well she could hold herself. And he feels bad for that because he was putting everything at risk, but also I think because he cares about her. And then the riddle. I love this riddle so much. It's beautiful. There are those who seek me a lifetime, but never we meet. And those I kiss, but who trample me beneath ungrateful feet. At times I seem to favor the clever and the fair, but I bless all those who are brave enough to dare. By large my ministrations are soft-handed and sweet, but scorned I become a difficult beast to defeat. For though each of my strikes lands a powerful blow, when I kill, I do it slow. When I read that, I literally sat there and I was like, I want to try and solve this. At first I thought it was happiness, but then the last two phrases, that doesn't make sense. And then I was like, this is cheesy, but I think it's love. And love, I felt like answered every single phrase, every single line. And then also just for the theme of what's going on in the story. So it was very exciting when I was right. And yes, this is a romance book, but it's so much deeper than that. Like this is, because especially for Amarantha to create this riddle, you know, she herself struggles with love. Her sister was betrayed by love. She thinks that she loves Tamlin, even though it's just possession. She's so upset she can't have what she wants. And then Feyre, her whole journey, it's not about just loving Tamlin. Through Tamlin, she was able to see herself, learn to love herself, learn to trust, learn to find hope again. Love as an overall theme is a big deal in this book. Even when she goes back and visits her sisters, her and Nesta have a new understanding and love for each other. Same thing with how she feels about Elaine. It's not just about romance, guys. It's so much bigger than that. I just feel like this book is so misunderstood and it breaks my heart. I love this world. So yes, I will be reacting to A Court of Mist and Fury. Like this video, subscribe, share it with your friends who've already read it, and love it. All the support really helps. It helps this channel grow. It helps the video get further in the algorithm. So thank you so much. I will see you all in the next video. Bye.